Welcome. My name is Dr. Eric Landrum from the Department of Psychology at Boise State University. This is a brief Jing video about data entry in SPSS and basically how to navigate a file and enter the structure of the file first and then finally to enter some data. I'm going to go ahead and click over to SPSS and where I want to show you some techniques on how to do this. And so here's the typical default view, the data view, and eventually we're going to enter some data here. Remember that the rows are individuals and the columns are actual variables. But to start data entry process from a blank file like this one, we always want to go over to the and tab over to variable view, and I'm showing you that tab right here. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to create a hypothetical problem that has two variables. It's going to have, I want to compare, let's say, the GPA of students in two different sections of a course, and so I'm going to have two variables in that data set, and one I'll just call course and the other one I will call GPA. Now if you notice, what happens is that it infills a lot of the default values here, which is going to be just fine. By the way, the variable names are pretty precise. So for example, you can't lead off a variable name with a number. You cannot have funky characters like an ampersand or an asterisk or a dollar sign in the variable names. If you wanted to have that kind of stuff in there to be more descriptive, if that was necessary, you would come over here to the variable label. And so I'm going to go ahead and say for the variable label, let's see, section number of the course. And so this is kind of helpful because when you get your SPSS printouts, which sometimes can go on for pages and pages, take a couple of seconds to actually label your variables. It'll be much easier to interpret down the road. And finally, I'm just going to come in here and add a note to myself, student GPA. All right, in this particular problem, at least the way that I envision it, the student GPA is the dependent variable on an interval ratio scale, and the course would be an independent variable, and in this case with two levels. Let's just be creative and call it section 1 and section 2. To be able to differentiate that in my data file, though, I need to come over here to my course, my independent variable, and where it says values, I'm going to click on that box, and I want to click on the ... the ellipsis that occurs right here that I'm pointing at on the screen, and click on that. I'm going to get this drop-down menu, and I'm going to add a couple things here, and I'm going to say that if I enter a 1, that stands for the students enrolled in section 001. I'm going to click on Add. And then if I enter a 2 in that for that data entry point, this is going to actually represent the students who are enrolled in section 002. I'm going to click on Add for that. When I'm done with all of this, I'm going to click on OK. And you're going to use this a lot for your independent variables where you want to code male and female, or year in school, or an undergraduate major. So your independent variables that are categorical or nominal scale, you're going to want to use this feature because it'll make your SPSS printouts much easier to read. I'm going to click on OK. You can see it's added some stuff here. If I ever wanted to get back into that and see what's there, I could always just click on that box again and it would expand, and I could, add, change, edit, and do all kinds of stuff. All right, so my structure is set up. Now I want to enter a couple of data points. And so I'm going to click over from variable view to data view. And now you see I've actually got my variables entered here. What's kind of nice in a complicated data set that if you forget what the variable stands for, just hover and look what happens. There'll actually be a little pop-up there that'll remind you about what you actually entered for that, and that'll be handy. This data set is not a big deal. When you get to larger data sets, that'll be a nice feature. I'm just going to enter some sample data, and so this is some student in section 1. In fact, I'll do a couple students from section 1 and maybe 3 students from section 2. And so the GPA of this student, 3.25, by the way, I'm just making this up, 3.11, 2.95, and you can see I'm entering the data here, and I can navigate in a 2.77. For my section 2 students, 3.87, a 3.44, and then finally 3.00. All right, and so I've entered some data here. I definitely want to click on Save to save it eventually. One other feature I want to show you is this little, what I call a toe tag. It's actually value labels. If you click on that, it will remind you of what the actual formal label is. And if you expand that a bit, you can see it really clearly. You can go back to the data view just by clicking on that. It's a toggle switch. Be sure to save your file when you're all finished. And that's it for me in this Jing video on SPSS data entry.